Mr. President, thank you for the recognition. I rise to begin a discussion that will take place during today about Senate Joint Resolution 10, which is a resolution that my colleague Senator Heinrich and I have filed to challenge President Trump's Day One declaration of a U.S. energy emergency. And you'll hear from a number of our colleagues today expressing the basic point that the declaration is a sham. There is, in fact, no emergency, but it has been declared so as to gut various environmental laws passed by Congress, still part of U.S. statutory law, in order to advantage certain kinds of energy, i.e. oil, gas, and coal, and punish other forms of energy, wind, solar, etc. I'm very, very happy to have the support of my colleague, Senator Heinrich, who is the energy expert on the Democratic side in this body, and very, very happy to have so many colleagues who will be speaking on this matter today on the Senate floor. President Trump took a number of actions on his first day in office, and many of them got a lot of attention. One that didn't get so much attention was his decision on day one to declare that the United States was in an energy emergency, and therefore we needed to bypass environmental laws. I want to dig into the sham nature of the emergency declaration and then explore why President Trump actually has done it, and finally conclude with a request to my colleagues that the Article I branch should not just roll over and play dead when a president declares an emergency that does not actually exist. So let's first talk about the claim that President Trump has raised that the United States is in an energy emergency. This is a chart that shows U.S. energy production from 1950 until essentially today. The chart goes through about 2023 and does not include the 2024 numbers. But I am proud to stand here and tell you, especially as one who has supported many of the policies that has led to this growth in American energy, that America is producing more energy today than at any point in the history of this nation. America is the leader in the world in energy production. And for the last few years, we've been an energy surplus nation, producing more than we consume. You will see that the chart includes different kinds of energy, oil, gas, coal, renewable, but the direction of the chart shows steady increase in production. Let's go into the kinds of energy we're talking about here. In 2024, America produced more natural gas than at any time in the history of this country. In 2024, America produced more petroleum than at any time in the history of this country. And in 2024, America deployed more renewable energy than at any time in the history of this country. In fact, in 2024, more than 90% of the energy added to the nation's energy grid was from renewable sources, wind, solar, and battery storage. The United States recently, in the past few years, there may be a technical term for this, Mr. President, but I call it an energy surplus nation. We produce more than we consume. That moment happened in 2019, where our production started to outpace consumption. And in every year since 2019, that surplus has grown. And the surplus in 2024 was at record levels. And it's a good thing to produce significantly more than we consume. Why is it a good thing? Because we're able to sell energy to others, reducing our trade deficit. I participated with senators in lifting the ban on export of crude petroleum a few years ago. And that plus exports of liquid natural gas have helped us with our trade deficit. But more directly related to this moment in time, the export of American energy has also helped us help other nations who are reliant on energy from petrodictators. The nations in Europe that had to rely on Vladimir Putin, nations in other parts of the world that have had to rely on Iran or Venezuela, now increasingly are able to access U.S. energy. I was in Finland over the weekend visiting Virginia Guard troops exercising with the Finnish army. Finland is importing liquid natural gas from the United States and using it for their own energy needs and also for the energy needs of other European nations. So where's the emergency? More oil than ever, more natural gas than ever, more renewables than ever, and a record surplus of production over consumption. Where is the energy? The energy is not in the energy sector. The energy is Donald Trump self-creating an emergency. Because Donald Trump, in other actions taken in the first week of his administration, has gone full tilt to challenge energy projects that are creating jobs and lowering prices all across this country. Donald Trump and his administration are attacking wind projects. They're attacking solar projects. They're attacking clean energy projects that aren't oil, coal, natural gas, and nuclear. And by doing so, they're reducing supply and likely raising prices on American consumers. There are a number of projects in Virginia, as an example, that have benefited from tax breaks that were included either in the Inflation Reduction Act for clean energy projects or the bipartisan infrastructure law for rollout of electric vehicle charging, for example. President Trump's administration has attacked those projects, has put them on hold, and the Virginians who were intending to invest billions of dollars hiring people to build these projects are now uncertain about what they can do. Why would a president declare an energy emergency and then attack homegrown clean energy projects in my state and elsewhere? And that's exactly what President Trump is doing. Why would he do that? Well, we don't have to speculate about the answer. We know the answer. In the summer of 2024, President Trump held a meeting at Mar-a-Lago with the CEOs of major oil and gas companies. And they reported upon the substance of that meeting. And here is a headline from The Guardian. Other publications carried the same news. Trump promised to scrap climate laws if U.S. oil bosses donated $1 billion to his campaign. One of the oil executives at the meeting quoted Donald Trump saying, "You'll get it on the first day. Oil and gas will get preferential treatment on the first day with end runs around environmental laws passed by Congress that are still part of the statutes we take an oath to implement in our jobs." And in fact, Mr. President, the oil and gas guys did get it on the first day. What did the Trump fake energy emergency deliver to those he had promised to support? Here is what was delivered in the emergency order. The president said there's an emergency, and so we need to bypass laws passed by Congress. We need to bypass the Clean Air Act. We need to bypass the Clean Water Act. We need to bypass the Endangered Species Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the National Historic Preservation Act, the National Environmental Policy Act. Because of this fake emergency that he has created out of thin air, we need to take all these laws that Congress has passed, many of which have been in statute, like the Clean Water Act, for more than 50 years, and we need to give energy producers and transmitters the ability to bypass these laws in order to produce and transmit energy. It's interesting, though, when you read the executive order, it talks about energy production, but you have to go to the last section of the order to read what energy means. And President Trump is calling for a national emergency and bypassing all of these laws if you want to produce using oil or gas or coal or nuclear or hydro, but not for wind, not for solar, not for clean battery storage, If your homegrown American low-cost energy is wind, solar, and battery storage, you don't get to bypass environmental laws. You have to comply with the letter of the law as Congress intends. We're only giving a break to the guys who supported Donald Trump, the fossil fuel industry. Donald Trump is so willing to give away the farm to big oil and gas that he even, in the first provision in the emergency order, said we also need to bypass property rights. He encouraged federal agencies to make aggressive use of eminent domain to produce fossil fuel energy. Those watching understand what this means. Eminent domain is the government taking the land from private property owners, and there's a set of rules in the federal code about when you can use eminent domain for energy projects. But Donald Trump has said, you know what? If you want to do oil, coal, and gas, you don't have to follow the rules. You can even take people's private property by bypassing the rules for oil, gas, and coal, but of course not for wind and solar. Not for wind, solar, and battery, the clean energy that has been 95% of the power added to the grid just last year. So we know what the game is. You'll get it on the first day, big oil, and they did, and Donald Trump is now giving them an easy pass lane to speed by clean energy projects that are lower cost and cleaner because he told them he would do it if they supported his campaign. This is no emergency. It was declared for a corrupt purpose, and it is an unacceptable effort to undermine laws passed by the Article I branch. And so I am on the floor with my colleague, Senator Heinrich, and I'm going to yield to him in a second, to just ask Congress, be Congress. Be the Article I branch. If a president can just stand up and make up an emergency and then gut laws that Congress passed, what's to stop President Trump from making up another emergency and gutting other laws? What's to stop any president, Republican or Democrat, from fabricating a complete emergency and using it to gut laws that Congress has passed? You know, if President Trump doesn't like the Clean Water Act, I happen to like it. I don't think it's perfect, but the Clean Water Act has helped us restore the James River in the city of Richmond, where I live, which won an International River Prize a couple years ago as the most improved river in the United States, a river that was a sewer that was closed off to fishing for 50 years, now has fishing, swimming, rafting, kayaking, bald eagles that had been extinct along the river because of chemicals now breeding in one of the most dense populations of bald eagles in the United States. I like the Clean Water Act. I think it served a valuable purpose for 50 plus years, but maybe President Trump, who was elected, has decided that the Clean Water Act or the Clean Air Act or property rights protections have outlived their usefulness. And if he's decided that these laws have outlived their usefulness, well, he's got two Republican houses. He could introduce a bill to repeal the Clean Air Act or repeal the Clean Water Act. That would be the right way to do this, not invent a bogus fake emergency and unilaterally gut these laws. But the president's got a problem. If he introduced a bill to repeal the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, not even Republicans, some Republicans would, but not even Republicans would support it. In two Republican houses, he would have zero luck in repealing these laws that have protected the public health and the environment. So his attitude is, wow, I could benefit my big oil cronies by repealing these laws, but that's a non-starter in the Article I branch. So why don't I just kick the Article I branch to the side, create a fake emergency and run them, and that's how I benefit my cronies. Congress should stand up against this and vote for Senate Joint Resolution 10 because it's the right policy, and we shouldn't gut these provisions except by doing it in the course of ordinary legislative business, should that be the will of the appropriate majority of both bodies. That would be the way to do this. So I'm asking my colleagues to stand up and support Senate Joint Resolution 11. This would be horrible policy, but more than a horrible policy on these laws, it would also set a horrible precedent. A precedent that a president of either party can invent a sham emergency and then grab away from Congress powers that Congress has under Article 1. Let's not be sheep in this place. Let's not have this be the silence of the lambs, just doing whatever Donald Trump says he wants to do with the Article 1 branch, not saying a mumbling word, not willing to issue a peep, not showing a backbone, not showing a voice. We've got a backbone, we've got a voice, but more importantly, we took an oath to a Constitution that gives Congress certain powers. We should not let the president trample on those powers. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
President.
Senator from New Mexico.
Mr. President, I want to thank my colleague from Virginia for bringing this resolution to the floor. And it was a little less than a year ago, I met with workers at several manufacturing facilities in New Mexico. And these are the workers who are making the solar and wind technologies that are generating record quantities of clean, affordable, American-made energy. And at a groundbreaking ceremony for Array Technologies at their factory in Albuquerque, I met with over a dozen New Mexicans. And they told me about the impact of our investments on their lives, their ability to support their families. I talked with folks like Ramon Romero, who joined Array Technologies as an entry-level machinist, worked his way up to become, to have a career as a production manager. I met with Daniel Beltran, who explained how Array's expansion has created new job opportunities for himself and many others in his community. He told me that the company's growth has been life-changing for him. And I met with Ray Mudaluri, who spoke about how significant a role Array has played in supporting her growth as a young professional and her ability to serve her community. Here's what every one of those New Mexicans had in common. They were able to create better lives for themselves, better lives for their families, because of the jobs that were available for them. This is what I mean when I say these industries, these clean industries, are creating careers that New Mexicans and other Americans can build their families around in their home communities. And thanks to the investments that Democrats made in the last few years, we have seen record growth in new American manufacturing facilities. More than 400,000 new jobs have been announced across the country as part of this Made in America clean and affordable energy manufacturing boom. In New Mexico, we celebrated the first wind towers coming off the line at Arcosa Wind Towers, a new factory in Belen. It was a shuttered plastics factory. And now Arcosa's workers are creating the huge steel towers. They're heading straight to the SunZia Wind and Transmission Project, a 3.5 gigawatt project. That project, SunZia, brought in more than $20 billion to states like New Mexico and Arizona in capital. And when it comes online, it's going to generate more clean power with its wind turbines than the Hoover Dam. It is the largest ever built clean energy project in the Western Hemisphere. America is actually building big things again. So these projects have enormous scope, but our affordable, American-made energy boom is already under threat because of the uncertainty that President Trump has foisted on the energy sector. And if you're thinking about opening a new factory like Array or Arcosa did in my state, you don't know what your tax structure will be after the Republicans take up their Trump tax bill. If you're trying to site and build a new transmission line, the federal agencies and the staff that you work with just had their expert staff sacked, making it hard to get a permit when no one's on the other end of the phone. And thanks to Trump's so-called national energy emergency, many of the lowest cost, 100% clean additions to our grid can't get permits. Make no mistake, Americans' electric bills are going to go up. I'm going to say that again. Americans' electric bills are going to go up because Trump and his loyal Republicans are picking winners and losers on the power grid. That's why I'm joining my friend and colleague Senator Kaine to force a vote to put an end to all of this before any more damage is done. And I want to be clear about something, and certainly Senator Kaine raised this point, but America is the world's leading energy producer. And before Trump injected all of this uncertainty, our country was producing record quantities of both conventional and clean advanced energy. There is no energy emergency. It was made up to skirt the law. It was made up to favor some sources and not others. But if Trump gets his way, his faux declaration may very well create a real emergency, an energy emergency and an economic emergency. I also want to be clear to my colleagues across the aisle that this clean energy phenomenon has created 400,000 jobs around the country, but most of them are in Republican-led states. This is not a red states or blue states issue. This is about good-paying, blue-collar, skilled jobs in all of our states. So what's at risk because of all of this? Let's take a look. In North Carolina, there is a new nearly $13 billion with a B, $13 billion Toyota battery plant, which will employ 5,000 workers. Where are we getting our batteries now? We're getting them from China. This is progress. This is putting Americans to work to make batteries here. In Louisiana, First Solar announced $1 billion for a new solar energy project that is projected to create 700 new jobs, making that technology here, not being dependent on China. In Kentucky, Ford is building a new battery plant which will employ another 5,000 workers and manufacturing batteries here instead of China. In Georgia, an estimated $1 billion in projects to modernize the power grid. And our power grid needs a heck of a lot of modernization. We're going to have more and more demands on this grid in coming years, especially with the growth of data centers and AI. $1 billion sidelined to upgrade that power grid in Georgia. Do we really want all these jobs to disappear because President Trump wants to create a war on affordable American-made clean energy? Do we want to import more batteries from China? I don't, because that's what's going to happen if we turn our backs on these factories and these energy sources. And among other things, Trump's so-called national energy emergency declaration would allow his administration to use eminent domain, one of the most controversial powers that a government can have, to take private land for oil and gas infrastructure at the expense of our American jobs and livelihoods. As we speak, President Trump's chaos and incompetence are jeopardizing and fueling the real energy emergency in our country. Trump's plans to eliminate dozens of advanced energy tax credits. Those have unleashed more than $165 billion in private sector capital, moving into over 1,000 factories and expansions across the country. The president has also halted many of the Department of Energy's loan guarantees, which will further jeopardize the U.S. energy manufacturing expansion and will lead to higher energy bills for millions of Americans. This is blatant hypocrisy, as Trump's favorite billionaire bro, Elon Musk, actually took a $465 million federal loan guarantee from that same department that literally saved Tesla from bankruptcy in 2010. And when these massive multi-billion-dollar construction projects stall, it's not Trump's billionaire friends who will suffer. It is everyday Americans who work in these factories. It's all the families who will be stuck with higher electric bills. And I want to emphasize something that my colleague from Virginia raised. More than 90% of the electricity generation projects currently in line to connect to the grid all across this nation in red states and in blue states, waiting interconnection, are clean energy projects. They are wind, solar, storage, nuclear. Just last year, 93% of new electric generation was carbon-free. That is a record. We added 52 gigawatts, 50 nuclear power generating station quantities worth of solar, wind, and storage to the grid in the last year alone. And there's a reason for that. In addition to being clean and carbon-free, and many of the big companies that procure energy care about that, these power sources are cheaper, they're faster, they're less capital intensive than older technologies like coal-fired plants or gas turbines. Put simply, clean energy is the cheapest electricity on the grid. You can see it right here. Onshore wind and solar, by far the cheapest. We got combined cycle natural gas, but guess what? You can't get a gas turbine these days. If you order a combined cycle natural gas turbine today, you're going to wait 3, 4, 5 years before that's actually delivered without permitting. Nuclear is great. I hope we build more of it, but we've got to get the cost down. It's 18 cents a kilowatt hour average. So if we don't plug these clean sources into the grid, especially in a time of surging demand, the outcome is obvious. Prices will go up. And it's not physically possible to stand up enough costly gas plants to keep growing our power demands and keep prices down. As I said, the wait times to just get a turbine is 4 or 5 years. If Trump has his way and keeps blocking American-made clean energy projects, we know that significantly higher energy and electricity costs are on the way. Is that what we want to do? Is it really we want to impose on working families that are already struggling to pay for eggs, or if they haven't crossed that off their grocery list already, the rising cost of milk, groceries going through the roof, rent payments going up, and we're going to increase their electric rates? Because that's what this fake emergency is going to do. You know, a couple of weeks ago, an Alabama utility company sent a letter to customers saying, sorry, you owe us another $100 because what we credited you based on the law is no longer valid. Trump's EO took that away. So pony up, write us another $100 in your electric bill this month. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. You know, advanced groups who do the analysis, folks like the Rhodium Group, have looked at what his crusade will mean regarding American clean energy investments and electricity costs. And they say that on average, Americans' families' electricity bills could go up by nearly $500 a year as a result of these actions. Trump's war on American-made clean energy is going to kill thousands of jobs in the skilled trades. Huge construction projects are going to get stalled. The biggest winner in all of this is going to be China. China wants to become even more dominant in the global renewable energy marketplace. They will happily take the private investment that could have gone to the United States and take those jobs back overseas. The biggest loser from this is our economic competitiveness, our national security, our families. Trump has claimed that his so-called national energy emergency order is needed to unleash more American fossil fuel development. He's also wrong about that. Not only is our production 13 million barrels a day on average, a little over that, is not only that record, is that not a record producing number, but oil and gas executives will tell you the truth. Look at what ConocoPhillips CEO said in response to a question about this. Would he really increase production with the gloves coming off? He said, not really. Why is that? It's because American oil and gas production is already at a record high, and it's not economically advantageous to push production further. I know this firsthand because we're producing more oil and gas in New Mexico than most other states combined, with the exception of one. Clearly, we need to put an end to this stunt that will fuel a real energy emergency, kill thousands of jobs, and raise electricity costs on American families. The most important decision of our energy future, worth hundreds of billions of dollars in private sector investment, factories, thousands of high-quality jobs, remains in the hands of our Senate Republican colleagues. If you want to have an all-of-the-above approach, if you want to continue to bring down energy costs, if you want to protect jobs for hardworking Americans in our states, and to help America remain the global leader in energy production, I would urge you to vote in support of this resolution and against higher electricity bills.